man I'm talking about today is a licensed therapist, clinical social worker, holistic nutritionist, personal trainer, former ninja warrior, uh, climbing enthusiast, recreational monster athlete. Um, Honestly, we're just going to get right into it. My man, Trey Bell.
What's up, bud?
What's cracking, baby?
Oh, man. Just waking up extra early for you out here in the Colorado mountains.
What time is it there?
7:25.
Oh, perfect. Well,
But,
there's no one I'd rather see.
yeah, well, I mean, had to get the meditation, routine going in the morning. Just
Yeah.
make sure I'm here with you. So,
See, I'm actually probably even start right there. So I know this is my first morning episode of Brews with Bosses. Now, as the name of the game goes, right? What are you sipping on right now? Because if it's 7:30, I hope it's not booze.
we got a nice little warm French press coffee here from New Mexico.
Yeah.
So fairly local down here in Southern Colorado. So it's a little dark roast pinyon pine. Pinyon pine. Yeah.
I like that name.
Yeah. What about yourself?
I got Rise Up Coffee. I would like to say that they're local. Don't know, but they came to Delaware. I think they got like a bunch of locations now. But it's one of those things. I'd like to say that I'm not addicted to it, but it was worth like a 45-minute wait this morning, and I wasn't even mad. So yeah, I'm fired up. I'm jazzed. I'm ready to roll. You started off talking about a morning routine. We've had multiple conversations, obviously, of like how important that morning routine is. But before we actually talk about like what the morning routine is, right? Why do it?
Well, so over the years, I've noticed myself suffer a little bit from like lack of focus and attention at times. And so what I've noticed for me is like, if I start the day with an organized mind, it just flows and trickles throughout the rest of the day. Also, thing that I think is like vitally important is like you do a couple things on a regular basis and you're already accomplishing goals like first thing in the day. And so it just makes you a little more goal driven and able to like produce for the rest of the day. So, I mean, I wake up, make some coffee, read a book, stimulate my mind a little bit. Then I go through meditation. And I mean, I would say over the last year, I mean, I've accomplished that almost every single day. And that's something I've been doing for a couple years now, but really like honing in on that stuff. And it just like gets your mind organized and like ready to roll in my eyes. Mm-hmm.
So do you notice a difference? Like, I'm in the same boat as you, right? And I've been doing this now for about, I'll say 3 years, like consistent. Sometimes like I added the cold showers in there, and that was a game changer for me. Adding the 15 to 20 minutes every single time of like just some sort of high intensity interval training, movement, whatever it is, drunken monkey, like karate, flow style stuff. But have you noticed differences on days where you don't do it?
I personally do. And, some people outside of me and outside of my mind and outside of like what's going on up top here might not. But I internally can feel that, on days where I'm not, I just feel a little more spacey or a little less organized or a little mentally cloudy or whatever. And it might not be like something that might be super obvious to like the outside, eye, but like internally it takes a lot more work for me to feel like, more organized, driven, and like ready to roll,
Yeah. I found that, so for a while it was just me, right? I put like the onus on me and I said like, I need this. And it was that level of discipline to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually craved the clarity, and I craved that sense of discipline and that goal orientation that like, I know that no matter what the day brings me, I started off doing something that I don't want to say you don't want to do, but it does turn into something that's like, it's disciplined, right? I mean, you don't naturally at the beginning, you don't want to sit there and just think or, get into a cold shower, for instance. Like you don't want to do those things, but when you do that, it's kind of like the check in the win column of like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, We did that. We did that today. So it's kind of funny in the beginning stages. It was more, I need to do my morning routine. So I was waking up, if we're out at a bachelor party, I'm waking up 20 minutes before, like, all right, get it together here, get focused. And now it's gotten to the point where like my wife will notice on days if I don't get my full routine in, or if she starts to notice, she's like, did you meditate? It's kind of funny that like when you're with people for that long, that they start to notice the difference that it makes in your day and the clarity and that focus. But it's that level of energy and putting yourself above yourself, right? So like for me, it's always just been me versus me. If I were just starting out, what are some ways that I could kind of take control of my mind, my thoughts, and like where you want to go with that?
Yeah, loaded question there.
Super.
Yeah, I would say the first jumping point is like awareness and consciousness. Um, and the reason why I say that is because like most of us are going through life with a lack of awareness, and I say that coming from that place still, because I'm not totally aware, but like much more aware than I used to be. And I think that that's like the jumping point. It's like awareness of where we came from, why we operate the way we do, and like acknowledging that like, we are thinking constantly throughout the day. And I mean, I guess that's why I view meditation as such like a great tool, because you're literally sitting there with your thoughts. And I think there's just like this preconceived notion that like meditation is like blank mind. You're not supposed to be thinking. You're not supposed to like, and that's, I guess it's not entirely wrong, but it's fairly wrong, because like what we're looking at is like just acknowledging that you're thinking. Like that's the starting point in my eyes of what it is like, all right, I'm thinking right now. And the more you can understand that you're thinking throughout the day, the more you realize that you make over, on average, 40,000 choices or decisions throughout the course of one day. Like that's a lot when you think about it. I mean, every word that's coming out of our mouth is a choice that comes from a thought. Like, do I want to go turn left at the light today? Am I going to slow down for this car? Like, all these things. And again, it would be exhausting to recognize that these are all the thoughts and like having to be present with every single thing. That's why, sometimes like figuring out how to go on what's a good time to go on autopilot, what's a good time to like really be conscious. But that all comes from a place of awareness. And so I like to tell a lot of people like when they first start out becoming aware, it kind of sucks, because it's like you're more aware of like all the crap that's going on in your head. You're more aware of all the crap that's happening in the world. Like, you're like, why do people do this? Why do people do that? And that sucks at this to start out. But like long-term value is that like, once you create that awareness, then you can do with that what you want to do with it. It's more easily to like let go of the fact that someone just cut you off in traffic. And it's like, well, someone cut you off in traffic, but you getting upset about them cutting you off in traffic is not going to make them have never cut you off in traffic earlier today.
Right.
Maybe they're, you don't know what's going through their mind. Maybe they're late for something. Maybe they're, just a young driver and they think that that's fun or cool, and like you being upset at what they did is not going to have made the thing go away. And it's probably not going to make that person cut you off or cut someone else off again, because like the reality is like, I don't like cutting people off, but every once in a while I'm late for something and I got to do like run over, and it's like, that's not my intention to like piss anybody off, but like the same juncture, so creating an awareness around everything that's happening up here, but also like the awareness that like other people are also operating from a different area than what you are is like, a whole nother like vacuum of awareness, I guess.
So I agree with that, with the cultivating self-awareness, because that's usually step one. My biggest issue with that is, self-awareness is, I'd say like self-awareness, meditation, empathy, like these are like sexy choice words today that you hear thrown around a lot. But my issue with a lot of, we'll say thought leaders and influencers and things like that, is they kind of let the premise stop there. It's like, introduce self-awareness. And just like you said, that's like opening a can of shit. You know what I mean? Like if you don't let them know that on the other side of that, like I preface a lot of my coaching sessions with like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Like, you know, we can sell the end result of like, this is where we want to be, but we're going to have to muck through some stuff to get there. And like, you got to realize the nasty stuff that you might potentially unearth here. So tell me from your perspective, how important is perspective when you're coaching self-awareness and all this kind of stuff?
Man, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is like awareness creates more more understanding of like your reality and your perspective, right? Because like you and I could be sitting in the same room, you know, we're going to have totally different experiences. It might be quite similar, you know, but like, let's say we're sitting in a room, we're chatting, and like a clown jumps in, like, you know, just pops in and is like, hey, you might be like, oh man, that's awesome. And I might have had like I might have watched it when I was like 10 years old, you
Right.
know, and I'd like jump out the window, you know, like, because like that, you know, scares me. That's like the reality of it, is like, you know, we are the sum of our experiences, you know, that's what our personality and our reality is made up of, you know. And so from the time you're 6 months old, you start forming your personality. You know, this is like old school Eric Erickson, like back like whatever 100 years ago or whatever it was, where he started like doing research on like when like people actually start becoming like a person, you know. And at 6 months old, you start remembering. You might not remember specifically, but through those experiences that you start having after that point, that's what shapes everything, you know. So things like, if I was to say, Red, you are shy, man. You were just super shy. And you hear that from me like 3, 4, 5, 6 times, or maybe you hear it from somebody else. Even if you don't believe the fact that you are shy, you might think you're really outgoing. You will start to take on those traits of being shy. It's a thing called neuroplasticity. Neuro meaning like the brain, plastic meaning moldable thing, right? And so what starts happening is, over the course of time, you know, we have all these experiences, or we're taught we're supposed to live this type of way. Maybe you're supposed to have like a salary and benefited job, you know, and like that might be great for you, but might not be great for me. Obviously, it's not great for me because I don't have that, you know.
Yeah.
and you know, and that's something that you might base your life on, and you might feel some guilt if you don't do what people tell you you're supposed to do, right? And so then what starts happening is you start limiting yourself. You know, you start limiting what your possible potential might be, because there's these norms or these experiences that we've had throughout the course of our life that like shapes how we see the world. So reality is different. You know, your reality, my reality is different.
Go on. I say go on because there really is. There's so much to unpack in what you just said, you know, and that could lead down a bunch of different alleyways. But having that, your reality is basically, you know, for anyone that's listening, like your reality is based on your perspective. All right. So what you consider real and what I consider real is something that you've talked about, where you say, what was the article you wrote about? 10 out of 10 pain. Right? If you haven't read that and you're listening right now, go to is it Live Wise Fit blog?
Live Wise Wellness.
Live Wise Wellness. And his blog, and there's a 10 out of 10. And it's a super interesting article. And just dive into that really quick and give me kind of the synopsis, because I talked about it actually with a physical therapist, and he was like, yeah, actually that's right on point, you know, in physical pain. So let me hear more about that really quick.
Yeah, almost 10 years ago. I went to a wilderness first responder training course. And so that I could like be outside and safe in the wilderness and not have to, you know, I could take care of people. Like, you know, I spend a lot of time outside. I like rock climb, you know, I do a lot of mountain activities. So it's like kind of important that, like, you know, if I get hurt, someone else gets hurt and whatever, you can be there to support it. Right. So during that training, we were told, when you're assessing a client or assessing a person or a victim, we'll say, for whatever they're dealing with, you're supposed to ask them 10 out of 10, how much pain you're experiencing right now. But right before that question, you're supposed to ask them, what's the most amount of pain you've ever experienced in your entire life? and that's like a vital part of the question, because like if someone broke their femur and they say they're at a 7, that's pretty serious. If they broke their femur before and that was their 10 out of 10, and they say I'm at a 7, you're in a lot of pain, you know. But if they had a paper cut and that's the worst pain they've ever experienced and they say they're at a 17, you know, it's kind of like, you know, it helps dictate upon like, well, you know, this is like, let's take this serious, but like maybe not as serious as a 7 with a femur break as their 10, right? So when you're assessing that, when you're like thinking about that, like I like to think of that as a like when we're talking about mindset, because it's like I have no idea what your worst trauma or worst emotional discomfort has ever been in your entire life. So it's so when you're moving through life, you know, it's important to realize that like people aren't as vocal about their cognitive or like issues they've had with the mind as they are with like a broken femur. You know, like if you have a broken femur, like you might tell, like that's something you might tell a lot of people, like, oh, I broke my femur, you know, like da 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 da. Like you're not gonna say something if you're sexually abused when you're 7 years old, right? That's something you internalize, you know. So understanding that when you're moving about life, I think is extremely important, because like, you know, say like back to the perspective thing again, right? Say we're going to Wawa, you know, and you and I like we're in the car and we're like, let's go get a hoagie. We like go through the door and some person comes before us and slams the door in front of your face, right? Like most reactions would be like, I'm pissed off, like that person's like angry, why would they do something like that to me, blah 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 blah. But like honestly, we have no idea what that person experienced earlier in that day. Like maybe maybe his wife like wanted a divorce and told him that morning, you know, and he's just like upset. So having like that weight, like understanding like that, like when we move about life, like we don't know what other people have experienced, and it's okay for them. Like, I mean, you're not going to go up to everybody and be like, hey, what's your 10 out of 10 emotional trauma that you've ever had? Right. But like also too, when we move about life, we can start to like understand a little bit more. Like if people operate a certain way, most of the time, it's not because they like are intentionally trying to just be a total prick. Like most of the time when they're operating about life, it's because a set of circumstances that might have happened that day, that week, that month, or that life. You know, for some people, they just had like kind of a shitty go about it. You know, and so it's easier not to take on the emotional distress or emotional discomfort of another human when you understand that like you have no idea what another person's experiencing in that moment.
So what are some ways that people could develop more empathy? Like, do you have any practicable, I don't know, practicable? Do you have any practices?
Yeah, practicable stuff, interventions. I would say, so again, like it goes back to like the first topic we're talking about, awareness. Because that's where everything comes from. So when you start becoming aware of the comparisons or of your relatability or your lack of relatability, you know, then you're able to understand the situation a little bit more, you know.
Relatability, right? Okay, I like, so to actually be, like, because what people say relatable, that's sympathy versus empathy, right? Like,
yes,
I totally feel where you're coming from versus like, I feel what you're feeling right now, you know?
Totally.
I may not be, but I can feel how upset you really are. Right.
Yeah. And also to piggyback off that, also like the awareness of like, maybe you don't know how they feel, you know, and that's okay too. You can still be, you know, a listener. You can still be like, maybe understanding is like not the right word, because like you know, you'll never understand the same way I understand something. Just because of our experiences that we've had in life, right? But like being able to like be present for a person, or like understanding that you can't relate to them right now, you know, and you just need to like listen, or you just need to be able to like let go of the person slamming the door in your face, you know, because you don't understand what they're going through and you can't relate to that, and that's okay too. But I think it might sound weird, but I think that's a big part of empathy. Like, is like, um, I've had like, I've had a bad time at something, I don't know exactly what your bad time looks like right now, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But like, I know what my bad time felt like, and like, I don't wish that upon anybody. And
Right.
I just want to be able to like support or even like back off sometimes. Like sometimes that's what people need, and
Mm.
like maybe asking those questions, like, what do you need? Well, how can I support you now? What do I need from you right now? What do you need from me right now?
Right.
Um,
So that's more like empathetic listening, right? Where you're kind of like actually practicing or empathetic questioning.
mhm,
That was one of the things that I latched on to what you said there. When people are explaining that, right? And that was a segue I wanted to go with in the 10 out of 10. How you said that, like I might be going through something, and I think like some of the best ways that you can do is one, be like quick to forgive, you know,
mhm,
like you said, if someone slams the door in your face, be quick to forgive, not quick to lash.
mhm.
Two would be that practice of like asking, before just reacting. And I say like responding to your thoughts before reacting to your emotions.
Totally.
And that 10 out of 10 that like, we see it today. Perfect example of like what's going on in the world today with Black Lives Matter. It is
Mhm,
so hard because of how divided the world has become, on these perspectives, and how there's some people who are getting everything like that. And they're really quick to say, holy shit, like I recognize where I've been living, this whole time and this. But there's people who realize that, and they say, let me share my perspective as to where I recognized, we'll say like white privilege, for example.
mhm.
Let me share my perspective of how I realize this. Now, there's going to be people that read it and they're like, wow, that's deep. There's going to be people who read it and be like, that's just a coincidence, and they're going to see what their reality wants them to see. Where I think the division is starting to come up into place is the people who are actually realizing that it exists are coincidentally the people that are really quick to judge those who don't get it right away and kind
Mhm.
of brush them away. And I think that's where it's kind of like you get more bees with honey than you do with vinegar. So like like if you understand it, make it your job to listen empathetically, to ask questions, to try and get people on the same playing field before saying like, well, you don't get it, so you're a racist piece of shit,
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of this is getting more separatist than it is cohesive. And that's just my 2 cents of what I've realized from like self-awareness and sitting back and just kind of like watching things unfold, because I do think there's a lot of opportunity to come together here. I think it's honestly that it could be like the dividing point, that line in the sand, but like self-awareness to on both sides of the coin of like, hey, listen, I'm here. I want to listen because I can't put myself in your shoes physically. It's impossible for me to say, hey, I totally get it, like it's impossible. But what I
Yeah.
can do is I can listen with an open mind and an open heart, hear what you're saying, and then not classify on both sides. Like you don't classify me as, all right, I just don't get it yet, but I'm going to let it sink in.
Mhm.
And also for that person to be like, well, nah, I just don't see it, you
Mhm.
know? So I don't know. I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but I feel like it comes back to the same things that we can use to change this world for the better. And I feel like we're straying farther and farther from that.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, not to sound all like hippie or whatever, but like, love is the place of like where people are gonna like come together more than like attacking or anger or whatever, and
Mm.
and again, it comes back to perspective, right? And like, I think it was like you're saying, like everybody gets things on a different level, and
Mm.
they need to, they like, we're all different learners, and I mean that's why there is like a thing where like some people are more like experiential learners and some people like are more verbal learners, and so I think it's important to remember that and put that in perspective as well. Like,
Mm.
but I totally agree with you. Yeah, the people that are quick to get it and then quick to judge, aren't. helping, aren't
Yeah.
helping the situation. I mean, I think it's amazing that people are able to understand that, like, about themselves, and gain that self-awareness.
Yeah.
Um, but you also, I guess, that feeds into another good point. You can't, like, expectations are like one of the worst things in the entire world, to be honest,
Oh yeah. Let's go
because it's
there.
like you're now assuming or expecting that someone else is gonna do things exactly the same way that you're gonna do things, and that's just like not how it works. I mean, that's like one of the beautiful parts about being a human,
Mm.
is that like everyone's so freaking different, and it's like such an amazing thing. But also in the same time, like you can't have this expectation that someone else is gonna like understands, like, maybe someone's gonna get on social media and like read all the read everything that's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement and be like, I get it, like I've understood now, like I get where I've been the issue or whatever. Some
Mm.
people have to have that experience, where maybe they're with someone that they see like has been racially profiled or whatever.
Yeah.
um and that's what they need. They can't just like read something, and that's okay. Like these are all like okay ways to learn. But yeah, but back to the expectations thing. I mean, when you start setting expectations, like it's never going to come out exactly the way that you want
Mm.
it to come out, regardless if it's like a vacation that you set expectations on, or like expectations on another person to perform a certain way during a certain thing, or
Right.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
I think expectations is one of those things that you could apply to any scenario ever, no matter who you are. Like if you're on a sports team, like to expect your quarterback to perform a certain way, yeah, practice makes perfect, but shit happens. So like, what do you say to the person that's inherently optimistic? Because that's kind of where you start to form a bit of your personality, is that like trust versus mistrust, when you had a lot of these expectations for people and they just keep letting you down, and letting you down. Is that an internal issue that like you're putting too much trust, you're expecting too much from them and you should expect less? So shoot, for the low bearing fruit? Or like, how do people start to learn to balance expectations?
uh self-awareness.
Hey, there we go. If anyone that's listening hasn't noticed the overwhelming theme here, underlying overwhelming, it is self-awareness is the cure to all reality, and it is an ever-present, ever-evolving thing that you, right when you think you have it, you don't.
Hmm.
You think you're in it, and your emotions might get the best of you, and in that moment, you might react instead of respond. As I said, like react to the emotion rather than respond to your thoughts first. And it is, I feel, and where we started in the beginning too, with the morning routine, that I believe helps you stay so grounded because you become hyper aware of, how am I feeling? Is this feeling me? Right. Um, and also not relating and identifying with that feeling. I'm sure you go like, you probably have to encounter this a lot, uh, through language or just people saying that, like, I feel this way versus like I am, like you have,
Totally.
right?
Oh yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, like going back to like that, I think I was talking about neuroplasticity or whatever, previously, like when someone says you are this way or you are that way or whatever, and you start taking on those traits, it goes the same way for self-talk, like that little voice inside your head that talks all day long that you're not crazy for, but it's like, that little voice says stuff to you all day, and predominantly, for a majority of people, it's negative. I talk about like your inner roommate. It's like the person that lives with you all the time. But it's like if you were to take that voice, put it in a human body, and have it follow you around all day long, like would that be really somebody you want to hang out
Right.
with? You know. And so, I mean, the way to that is like when you start thinking about it that way, you like take it out, like put it in another body, and think about it following you around all day long. It's a lot easier to then understand what's happening, from a thought perspective. Like when you can see what's happening a little bit more when you put a body into like your actual mind,
Mm.
and mindset. But back to that, like when you start making those I am statements, that's something that as a therapist, I rarely tell anyone what their diagnosis that I give them is, and that's because I do not want them to identify with that. I am depressed, like
Huh.
I am anxious, I am this. because once you start making those I am statements, yeah, that's like permanent. Like that is part of you. You take that on, you know, whereas like I feel like, you know, I always tell people like, have you ever felt angry your entire life? I'm like, no. Have you ever felt happy? You know, have you ever felt that way? And like most of the time when you say that, it's like, oh, well, feelings are pretty temporary. So if I can start like saying I feel, now no longer am I like taking on that emotion as like part of me or whatever it is, you know. I could like I am a therapist or I am a trainer, you know, and like it's cool to like have identification and have things like that, but like the more we can like non-identify with what's going on, like having I feel statements or there is there's like a pretty famous meditation coach named Joseph Goldstein, and he's like the guy who's like he is, you know, there's a little anxiousness right there, you know, there's a little sadness right there. And then you're not even using the word I, you know, you're just acknowledging that there's something going on. And that is awareness, you know, that is 100% what awareness is. You know, so if you start going back to, you were talking about like optimism, like, yeah, like the quarterback, like, you know, you're expecting the quarterback to do this or that or the other thing. It's just like, if you go with the like, man, let's all like play super hard, you know, just like try your hardest, you know. Right. And I know that sounds like kind of like trophy for everybody, you know, kind of like mentality a little bit. You know, but if you do your best, you're not going to have any regrets, you know, and you can only control what you can control. You know, you can't control like, you know, yeah, I mean, you got like whatever. Tom Brady's like won like a gazillion Super Bowls and is like one of the best quarterbacks, maybe the best quarterback of all time, even though I'm not a big Patriots fan. I can recognize that.
Greatness recognizes greatness, though.
Yeah, man, he's unbelievable, but like he's not going to be unbelievable every single time he steps on the field, you know, and that's okay. And you can know that like I'm just going to try my extreme hardest right now in this moment, and know that like no one wants to not try their hardest, you know. No one wants to have like a shitty game or a shitty conversation or whatever. Like that's not on the table, like most, you know. And so when you start understanding that like I can only control what I can control, I can like maybe I can amp people up and like, again, you know, use my energy to like get people excited and like, you know, do their best. And I can model, you know, I can model what I want to see in other people. I can I think I told you before, like one of my favorite things that actually popped up in meditation for me one time is be your best to create a world of better people. Because I think that's of so much value, because when you are your best, everyone around you is going to rise up as well. And so you can do that, but you also have to understand that like your best is not someone else's best, and not everybody's going to be on it 100% every single day, you know. Like, I mean, just like you said, like some days you wake up and like you do your routine, but it's a little half-assed. Maybe you didn't get enough sleep last night. Maybe you had, you know, you went out and like had a good time, and like, you know, you're just like not on it as much as you would have been like normally, you know, and that's okay too. But like, you know, you can only control what you can control, you know.
It's kind of funny because you touched on a lot of different things that where we could go with that. So when you're saying I am, and this is something I really wanted to address, because a lot of people I noticed during quarantine, like, I am not motivated. I am not like consistent. I'm inconsistent. I'm up, I'm down, I'm this and that. And I think the problem is that people were relating consistency to an emotional state rather than a level of discipline, right? So they're saying like, I feel inconsistent because I'm not motivated to do this. Well, I always say like, discipline precedes motivation. You know, it's creating momentum to get you in that direction. So like a lot of us, I felt like during this quarantine operated in that state where as soon as it happened, they had to go into fight or flight mode. And it stayed there for a consistent period of time. So you felt those feelings of stress rising to the top, right? You're just focusing on surviving this day-to-day grind. And what I noticed was that like people really crave structure. And that's like, I'm one of the most unorganized people you could ever possibly meet. But my routine allows me to kind of come back to that organizational standpoint and be like, all right, if I can get this done in this time, I know that's it. So what happened when quarantine hit was like people lost the structure, but they didn't lose the stress, you know? So we lost that level of routine that we had going for us. And people became wildly unmotivated to do anything because they didn't have their old structure and their old routine. And that's when they started saying, well, I'm just feeling inconsistent. Well, those emotions, those feelings, those thoughts, they were present the entire time. We were just distracted and we had our stress to focus elsewhere. So when we lost that external sense of identity, like you said, where I am a personal trainer, I am a therapist, I am a coach, right? We lost part of our identity and all that. And I think that's where people started to fall off the wagon. So one of the things that I've been really trying to coach is like how to change your state radically, like how to shift it really quick. So how important do you think that is? Like with shifting state, do you coach all that? Like to get people up and moving and in a positive presence, you know, head up, chin up, stay confident. Um, I mean, I know we talked about it a while ago, but state shift, I feel like is one of those things that's just not talked about a lot. And that might have been
Totally.
a big ramble for me, so I apologize. But
No, man. I think postural awareness is like really important. You know, I mean, one from a physical health standpoint, but like also from an emotional standpoint. You know, back when I was like in holistic health coaching school, they did this exercise. It was quite interesting where it's like if you start to fake laugh, it will eventually turn into a real laugh because you'll think about how ridiculous you are laughing, and then you'll go from either a neutral or bad mood or angry mood into like a happy mood just by faking yourself out into this like different sequence of like emotion, you know, through that action, right? So I mean, legitimately, a lot of times it is tricking your body or your mind into feeling a certain like shift or a certain type of way.
yeah,
Well, and what I would say too, like that I think is interesting, because like I mean, I think we all felt it when the quarantine happened. You know, I know I personally felt it. You know, and I'm typically a pretty like optimistic and happy person all the time. And
right.
I was definitely not in my best mind state when that all happened. But like I think the thing that was pretty vital through all that is like being easy on yourself, and like to start out with and realizing like, hey, this is like not normal, you know, and
Yeah.
this is unusual, and like it's okay for me to feel like shit right now. Like, you know, that's okay. Like giving yourself the permission, because what we often do is avoid what we're trying to. Well, we avoid those emotions. You know, it's like, all right, I don't want to feel angry ever again. So rather than saying like it's okay, I accept that I'm feeling angry or upset or whatever it is right now, we're just like push it off, like go to the gym, like go grab a drink, go do this, go do that, I want to go talk to a friend, like just totally distract ourselves like you were bringing up in the beginning,
Yeah.
rather than just like being like, hey, like this is a shitty situation, it's okay to feel shitty about a shitty situation, like there's no problem at all with that.
Yeah.
And to like piggyback off your sympathetic parasympathetic, I think it's really important for people to know that that's like it's good that we have those shifting emotions or those chemical states, because like legitimately whenever like humans were created, like I have no idea like whatever that was, but like, you know, billions or whatever years
It's like
ago.
100 years ago or something.
Yeah, 100, I think, like, yeah, at least I know it was at least 36 years ago.
Yeah.
But the reason why we have that sympathetic nervous system is because like that was like for being like chased by like a lion or like a cougar or like a bear, you know, like, so what happens is you're oozed in all these like chemicals that like make you perform, like make you focus, like your heart rate goes up, your adrenaline goes up. That's for like performance, to like run away or like climb something or like get out of the dangerous situation. And what people I don't think realize is like it's really good to have that, but
Yeah.
like also being stuck in traffic or having a busy schedule is like not any different than being chased by a bear. Like you're getting the same exact chemical response because you're viewing that thing as a stressful situation, you know. There have been studies done that say like you can, by your perception of a situation, you cannot be in you won't necessarily get your sympathetic state rolling, you know, if
Right.
like if
Like
you're
a
just stuck.
stress reappraisal kind of thing.
Dude, I'm sorry, what?
Like a
That,
stress reappraisal. So like when you look at an athlete, again, like with Kobe Bryant, Tom Brady, these high caliber athletes, right? They're in the same situation as the rest of their team, but they usually come out as the rising star. You know, they Michael Jordan turns it on. There's a reason why, and it's in that adaptiveness to his body and his mind, feeling those. You coached me through this when I was in Vegas, you know, like when I was having that panic attack like 10 years ago or 8 years ago or something. And I was just like, dude, it's bad. And you're like, ah, it's not that bad. Like it's confused excitement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think when people start to recognize that in that stressful situation, like you said, when you're in the car and you start having those feelings, being able to shift that. Because as you said, stress can be a good thing. Viewing stress as a good thing, like it gets deadlines done, you get shit done. It gets you out of scenarios. It brings you home to your family. It's helped us survive. We need it.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, where you're saying that, like to be able to recognize it, right? Have the awareness to be like, I'm in this state right now. I need to downshift. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I need to disengage this feeling and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when you look at the greats like that's one of the things that I coach for people in the restaurant. Notice that you're in that state and operate and just realize that like, all right, what can I do? Do you have any specific like totems or I say totem and like something that you could touch to create awareness, like to be like, all right, I'm present right now. Nothing can hurt me. Nothing can bring this danger. I'd say like chugging water really quick, taking a couple really deep breaths. Once you start to notice that like weeds feeling like, and you're like all up in your chest and you can't breathe. How can people shift state once they notice that?
I think like you bring up like sipping water. I think that's like a great thing. Anytime you hold your breath, you create awareness, because when you're not breathing, you're like very present on whatever's happening right there in that moment. And so when you drink water, you're not breathing, right? So I think it's good because it's like that blip on the radar, like you snapped it before, like where it's like something's different right now. And just like a subtle inhale and exhalation, making your exhalation longer than your inhale, engages your parasympathetic nervous system. Also pursing your lips, like when oxygen, like I think it's important to mostly breathe through your nose, but like when oxygen leaves through your lips and your mouth, you're actually engaging your vagus nerve, which is like your ticket to your parasympathetic nervous system. So I think that's a good tool. But also too, acknowledging situations in your life that bring you stress, bring on that emotional discomfort. Like taking a step back, like what on a daily basis like makes me stressed out, and that, analyzing that, not in the moment, but like in a moment like now when you're listening to this talk that we're having right now. Because when you start becoming aware of that stuff, what happens is you're able to, when you're in that moment, feel the physical symptoms of what happens to you when you're having a stress response. And then you can be like, all right, well, my heart starts beating faster. I start breathing through my chest rather than through my stomach. Maybe I get a headache. Maybe I get like tunnel vision. And when you're able to connect the dots with like stress as an emotional standpoint and stress as a physical symptom like standpoint, then you're able to like create more awareness around the times of the day or certain situations in your life that cause that. Again, creating more awareness around like what's going on in your world. So if you don't, if you look back and you're like, all right, well, anytime that I'm stuck in traffic, we'll just say, because that causes a lot of stress with people. Next time I'm stuck in traffic, let me be more aware of what's happening in my body. What are the physical symptoms that are occurring? Because like a lot of times, back to like we're talking about medical doctors versus like mental health practitioners, like it's easier a lot of times for a medical doctor to diagnose something because there's physically scientific statistics that say, or whatever, like your leg's broken. It's like moving like this. Like obviously we got a broken leg. Let's put it in a cast. When you're like emotional, that's something that's created internally, right? And so when we can start linking emotional responses to physical symptoms, we can start to become a little bit more aware of like what's actually happening in our mind. I don't know. Does that make sense?
For the uninitiated, we'll call it, for someone that's like hearing this maybe for the first time and they're like, I've been really thinking about this. I've been struggling, whether again, was it through quarantine, COVID, through everything that's going on through social media right now, from, family and friends alienating me. What can people do to physically become more aware? Like, do you have some practices like journaling, because I think recommending meditation off the gate, unless it's guided, unless you're kind of doing it with somebody, they're going to lose that taste for it,
Totally.
because it's not that immediate hit of dopamine, like,
Mhm.
like, you know, chugging a beer when you get home or you get anxious and distracted, because it has to be a conscious choice. So is it journaling? Is it what we talked about earlier with those I ams, like to become more aware and setting intentions for your day? Is it gratitude? Like, what can people do to start practicing this today?
So I would say, man, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, you bring up every single thing you just brought up is like a very, very useful tools. So you talk about meditation, and I'm 100% agree. I think it's an amazing thing, but also it can be like very intimidating, I guess, at first, and it also brings up a lot of stuff. Your eyes are shut, man. So it's just like constant thoughts rolling in there of
Mhm.
like all the crappy things that are going on in your world, and you're
Which
like,
people
you can't.
perceive that they're doing it wrong at that point, right? So,
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, actually, you're doing it right. Like that's exactly where you want to be. I know that sounds like really crappy, but the whole point behind that is like when you start becoming aware of like, oh, this is what I'm creating inside of my head.
mm,
Then you're able to like let those things go a lot easier, because it's like, oh, one of the things I love to say is a thought's just a thought.
yeah,
you know like it doesn't have to bear any weight in anything at all. It's simply like a thought that goes through your mind. You have thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts throughout the day, but for whatever reason, through perspective or experience, we like weight like a lot of the negative thoughts more than we do like the positive and neutral
yeah,
thoughts. you know and so I think tools like journaling or just like reflection. I mean, you can internally reflect on your day of like, I love to do like gratitude situation. I used to do this thing called what was it called? It was like basically like a morning journal, and it would be like 10 gratitudes from the previous day. That's what you start out with. Any like dream that you might have had the night before, you just write it down, and then there's you could do a page or two of like free association. So anything that like pops up in your head, it doesn't have to make any sense at all, just anything that's going on. And if you do that first thing in the morning, that's before the like ego mind, so like the judgment mind, or like the that little voice inside of your head really starts to take over. So
mm,
it's almost like wake up, like start busting that stuff out. Is kind of cool. That can also be an intimidating thing, because like a lot of people are like, well, I'm not going to just like freaking wake up and like first thing I do is like write a bunch of stuff down.
right,
So like I understand that person as well. And so, but also that's good to note that that's like that resistance to like perform, or resistance to do that. Is that just because like you don't want to deal with the emotional discomfort that might bring?
mm,
Is that because you don't want to deal with the emotional discomfort of just like getting up and like writing something down, or like switching up whatever it is? But anyway, I think journaling is like a really, really valuable tool
mm,
to a lot of people. I think even like from like a meditation standpoint, like not like trying to sit there and like zen out for like 20 minutes, like when you first start out, like a minute, 2 minutes. The honey hole, I think, is like 10 to 12 minutes is what I'm like seeing, is like that's like when you can work yourself up to that. That's where you start engaging more of your parasympathetic nervous system. You're starting to lose some of those like the regularly occurring thoughts that are happening, and you can be a little more like at peace with the whole thing. But it's so hard to sit there when you first, especially when you first, I mean, I sat for 15 minutes today, and like this morning, and like at like 12 or 13 minutes, I'm assuming it was 12 or 13 minutes, it could have been like 7 minutes, I was like kind of over it. I was like, all right, I'm ready to like drink some coffee and like
yeah,
prepare my mind for like talking to Red today. But I sat there, and I finished it out, and I think that's like important, because like um you know because that, I mean, but that happens, like thoughts
yeah,
come, thoughts occur, blah blah blah. But like just like literally sitting down, and maybe it's today, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's a year from now or whatever, but like sitting down and just like listing things in your world that stress you out.
mm,
It could be it could be tough conversations with your romantic partner. It could be, talking to your boss at work. It could be just your job in general or specific parts about it. Like, in listing those things, and also listing like things you notice that occur physically with you. Maybe that's like extended heart rate. Maybe that's like whatever. Some of the things we were talking about before, like lack of focus.
Right.
Subtle headaches. Sometimes people get subtle headaches when they're like stressed out. I mean, that's like, I know I do. And so like when you start listing those things, you start understanding what's going on physically in your body, then you can start connecting those to the areas of your life that you aren't aware, that aren't like steaming you right in the face. Like, like most people know, like, all right, I'm in traffic. This sucks. I'm stressed out,
Yeah.
So being able to transition to that, to like, there's another time in my life that I recognized that like I constantly get a increased heart rate. And it's not just like traffic or a tough talk with my boss. It's
Right.
whenever I go.
Anticipation.
Yeah, exactly. Anticipation. I mean, dude, that's the biggest stressor in the world, right? Like, I mean, honestly, if you're giving like a public speech, right? Like, as soon as you start talking, anxiety's gone,
Yeah.
but it's like the lead up to all that stuff, or the lead up to that talk that you're going to have, or like whatever it is, but
Yeah. I
yeah,
feel like,
it's just good.
no, you're
Feel like what?
good. I was going to say, I feel like anticipation was something when we were talking about expectations, um, how you anticipate and how you expect to perform, right? When we're talking about like real performance is a
Mm-hmm.
huge indicator they've showed. Like that's the reason why sports psychology has a job. It's the reason
So,
why psychology, just understanding the way that things are. And for someone that did battle with anxiety for a long time, I feel like I've gotten a better hold on it. There's still days where I'm like, whoa, all right, this is a day, but this is just a day. This is just a thought. You know what I mean? And you don't latch onto it. Like you said, with meditation, you don't have to sit there for 15 minutes in the beginning, right? Sit there for 30 seconds and just close your eyes and like, boom, win,
mm-hmm.
and build up. And I prefer to do a guided one. I don't know if you do as well. I think it helps me stay focused, having someone else's voice, some calming music.
Mm-hmm.
But going into it with like open expectations and not anticipating these terrible thoughts that you're going to have, and understanding that like if you do, that's okay. It
Yeah.
can't hurt you.
Totally.
Like that, like you said, a thought is just a thought, but the thought itself can cause such physiological stress and pain that you'll ruin yourself before you get there, you know?
Totally.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that again, me, for being in the restaurant, I try and talk to people about that. Like, as soon as that person walks in and you're like, fucking Karen, man, like, she doesn't tip. She just talks about what I want to do with my life. Same thing with like family parties and holidays where you're going to be around people, these big triggers. Like you said, become aware of your triggers, become aware of what times, what it is, and then realize that it's not necessarily that's the trigger, but it's the anticipation leading up to that point and your expectations of like, this is going to go like shit. So then you
Mm-hmm.
create all this, a month's worth of negative conversations of how things are going to go. Meanwhile, you had a week with 1,000 other interactions that you were never focused and never present on because your unconscious, your subconscious mind was this iceberg of 90% of everything that you're just, how do I deal with this right now? And it's always in the back of your mind. So I think a lot of things that you just mentioned are huge. They're pivotal pieces. Like if you were watching this, it's small steps, guys. This is the marathon, right? You sprint. Something I saw earlier. Quick success leads to ego. Long success builds character, or like something along those lines,
Yeah.
And you can't look at this as, all right, I'm going to get this done because this is what I want from the outcome. It has to be like, who is the person that I want to be in order to achieve the things that I want to do?
Totally.
And what skill set can I acquire? What can I get better and practice and challenge myself at? And I think I relate mindset and heart set a lot. the mindset is like the ability to remain disciplined and know that like you are actually fucking amazing and you're tough as nails, right? Like the shit that you've been
Totally.
through is what's going to build you on the other side of all this. But your heart set is that why you want to do it in the first place. And like, as you know this better than I do with people that, really struggle and battle with depression. Like it's not just a, hey, come on, snap out of it. These are necessary steps that have to be, again, like coming full circle. You have to have empathy when you're dealing with people that are clinically depressed, that struggle with mental and cognitive disorders, and that just, I just think in general, like we need to have more of it. And the things that you
Totally.
talked about today, becoming more self-aware, forgiving easier, having compassion for yourself. And as I said, self-awareness is this roller coaster because we are emotional creatures, right? I mean, we're meant to feel happy, to feel sad, to feel angry. Like those are okay. We're not saying that it's not, you don't have to be happy all the time. We both get angry. We both get sad. It's just not latching onto it. It's not identifying with it. And being able to really like forgive yourself when you are, and know that it'll pass, might
Yeah.
take a little bit longer, but
Right.
keep doing what you got to do to get to that other side, right? For whoever
Yeah.
it is.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I was like texting with you a couple weeks ago. I was having like a little bit of a not so happy day, and I was just like in it, and I was just like, we were texting. I was like, I've just like accepted that this is where I'm at right now. It's going to take me a little bit to get out of it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And the more that you're able to accept that, the less time you're going to spend in that situation, and I think that comes from, that place of self-awareness and like understanding like, all right, well, this is what's going on right now. I'm like, I can change this. Allowing the awareness of like, all right, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm a little anxious right now. That's okay. I don't necessarily have to flip the switch and be like, all right, but now I'm going to be like super happy, but like also too, as soon as you start acknowledging what you're feeling, automatically stuff starts going away. Like when you just say I'm angry, or like I feel angry, or there's some anger there, like just by noting that that's there, you're decreasing the feeling right there, right then and there. And I think you were talking about like you like guided meditation. I like guided meditation too, like predominantly, but I prefer like mental noting. I think is like something where it's just like, all right, breathing. Like if like whatever your mind is on, that's what you say inside your head. So it's like connecting with an anchor point, whether it's your nose, your chest, or your stomach. I like to focus on my stomach just because like that engages your diaphragm. Diaphragm's like your breathing muscle. We could talk like 2 hours probably about just like diaphragmatic breathing. But like yeah, right. But finding one of those 3 anchor points and just like focusing your attention on that. When you notice like, all right, breathing, like you breathe in, expand, you breathe out, you can contract. And like as soon as you recognize a thought that's happening, say thinking in your head, and what I often like to do is I smile. Like I'd probably look like a lunatic if you're like watching me meditate, because like whenever I notice the thought coming in, it's like I'm like, oh, there's a thought, man, and I smile just because like I notice that I'm like a little off track of where my mind's supposed to be, and then I get back to the breath. And dude, if I last,
huge.
yeah,
That is a huge like little hidden gem there to recognize that. Go ahead, keep going. That's big.
No, and that's just being like playful with that, just recognizing like, hey, it's just a thought right now, like whether that's like the thought of, I don't know, I got like 700 emails to answer today. I'm like, just thinking right now. All right, back to the breath, breathing, thinking. But man, if I last like 3 breaths without having a thought, like I give myself like a mental trophy, because like that's like a lot, so I just want like anybody who's viewing this right now to like understand that this like, I've been meditating for pretty consistently for about 6 years now, and if I make it 3 breaths without having a thought, like that's a big deal, and so
yeah,
like
100%.
yeah, and I was listening to this lady Sharon Salzberg. She was speaking. She's also a meditation coach, and she was like spent a lot of time over in Southeast Asia in a monastery as a Buddhist monk.
Mhm.
And she talks about that, like she had like a Zen master teacher or whatever, and was like teaching about meditation. And when like he was like, all right, how many people how many breaths did it take you before you had a thought? And people are like 10, 15. I didn't have a thought the whole time. And he's like, bullshit, 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 bullshit,
Yep.
bullshit. And like, someone was like 2 and they're like, winner. You know what I mean? Like that's like legitimately the case. So like I think our society like puts a lot of emphasis on like perfection and like not the strongness and not being vulnerable and like being like perfect and having like this like stigma. It's like, man, when we can come to terms with like 2 or 3 breaths without a thought is like kind of a big deal, like we are taking all the expectations off of ourselves and off the situation, and we're just like being able to like be present with the moment, the thought, whatever it is, the emotion, whatever it is. And like that presence is the awareness that you and I have been talking about for this whole time. So I just think it's important to like, we take those expectations off of ourselves, off of other people, off of everything, and just like allow for, for what is.
Bomb diggity, brother. I couldn't agree more. And honestly, to try and keep this before we continue to go on, because like you said, any of these topics we could spend another hour on individually, which we have. But on the whole, this is kind of one of those things that I wanted to just like totally encompass, that if someone is ever entertaining the thought of trying to make this conscious change in their life, you have to, it is totally okay, whatever you're going through, like accept that it doesn't make you wrong. But it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to be vulnerable in order to do that. Like vulnerability is cool nowadays, guys and girls, it's totally fine. I was a train wreck, still am, but it's these days that you recognize that you are a work in progress. Your story is not done being written. This is just a chapter in the book, and the best is still yet to come. So, Trey, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's been an honor that we were able to finally catch up on here. I hope we got some super great nuggets of information for people to take away. Where can people find you that are listening to learn more about what you got to offer?
So my website's livewisewellness.com. That just kind of gives an encompassing view of everything that I kind of do. They can also find me at Trey Bell, TreYbell on Instagram. And those are like probably the 2 best sources to get a hold of me. And you can also follow me on Facebook, just Trey Bell, TREY space BELL. And those are probably like the best outlets to get in touch with me. But it's been super cool, man. Hope we can do it again sometime. I feel like we're only like getting to the tip of the iceberg right now of everything that's going on.
And that is good, not latching onto all of that, being able to focus on the major issues, from within there. So it's good. Love it.
Totally good. Yeah, man.
All right, brother. Well, it's been an honor. Salute.
Totally.
Take care, man.
All right, take it easy. See ya.
Yeah, actually.